right, we are halfway through Anim Zemirot. I gotta say, I've really been enjoying learning about this prayer in depth. Last week we kind of covered the broader issues that Anim Zemirot is trying to address. We find it at the end of our service, and the dilemma that we've had the entire service is how can we even hope to relate to an all-powerful, unknowable God. And we've just finished an entire service of prayers, and was it even worthwhile? And so it expresses this dilemma of, on the one hand, longing to relate to this unknowable God, and yet not being able to do that. And so trying to find a way to bridge it. And so we saw that it was composed by Yehuda Chassid, so Judah the Pious in the 12th century, who was a Kabbalist, leader of the Hasidei Ashkenaz, the pious ones of Ashkenaz and kind of central Germany. And the couple of important themes. So one, as we go through this, pay attention to the relationships. In basically every single line of Anim Zemirot, we're talking, the poet is talking about a relationship between someone and God. Sometimes he speaks in the first person, so it's him himself. Sometimes he's describing somebody else relating to God. So that's one thing to pay attention to. A second thing, we talked last week about the term kavod, which means glory. And there's an idea of an upper kavod and a lower kavod. The upper kavod, that's the distant part. That's God's essence that we can't touch it, right? The lower kavod, that's the manifestation of God's essence into the world in some sort of tangible way, some sort of imminent way. And so Anim Zemirot is going to play with that as well. How can we know God, and where is it impossible to know God? So we're going to pay attention to the word kavod as it comes up, and the word ata, you, as it comes up. At times, we're going to talk about God's kavod, which maybe we can relate to, although it could be the upper kavod or the lower kavod. And at times we'll speak to you, which seems to be the transcendent God that the poet is struggling to relate to. So we'll keep in mind all of these different terms. So this is the first section. I need to make my head smaller. The first section of prayers, and so first section of lines, and just keep in mind those questions. Who is relating to God in these passages, and are we looking at the upper kavod, the lower kavod? So I sing hymns and compose songs because my soul longs for you. My soul desired the protective shade of your hand, to know all your mystery. When I speak of your glory, my heart yearns after you. And so I speak about your glories and glorify your name in love songs. I talk about your glory, though I have not seen you. I describe you, though I have not known you. So we looked at this first line a little bit last week. I'm going to quickly remind ourselves. Almost every single line in Anim Zemirot is derived from a passage in the Bible. A few are coming from rabbinic teachings. We see Ve'ele divrei David ha'achronim. These are the last words of David, the utterance of David, son of Jesse, the utterance of the man set on high, the anointed of the God of Jacob, the favorite of the songs of Israel. And we have here Anim Zemirot, which is the favorite. Let's see. Anim Zemirot, right here, these last two words. This is the favorite of the songs of Israel. So by starting out in this way, the Yehuda Chassid has aligned himself with David, right? David is the legendary author of all of the Psalms, He's the greatest poet. And so this is something that is not uncommon for later poets to do, is to describe themselves as being somehow David-like, or the latest incarnation of David, so something to that effect. And so we've made a reference here to that. And then also in the first verse, we cite from Psalm 42, Ka'ayil ta'arog afike mayim kein nafshi ta'arog elecha Elohim. Like a hind crying for water, my soul cries for you, O God. So this word ta'arog with an ayin, the sense of crying or longing. And so our prayer makes a pun with it, using vishirim erog and nafshi ta'arog. So nafshi ta'arog is taken directly from the verse in Psalms, my soul cries for you. Erog here is with an aleph, different root entirely. Here we translated as compose. Literally, erog is to weave something. So I sing, I sing, beautiful songs, and I weave poems, something like that. It's a beautiful opening line. And so this is just our introduction. I'm gonna weaving these songs, and then we looked at this as well. This is the very last line, where we also pick up on this nafshi ta'arog. So the last line of Anim Zemirot, nafshi ta'arog. May my meditation be sweet to you, for my soul longs for you. So we begin and end with the longing of the soul for God. All right, that's review. Now let's move forward. The next line, nafshi chamda betzel yadecha lada'at kol raz sodecha. My soul desired the protective shade of your hand, to know all your mystery. Does that ring any bells?
Psalm 1.
Psalm 1, okay. How about thematically? The protective shade of your hand.
Jonah?
Jonah, okay. Oh, like you think of the shade of the tree?
Yes.
Okay.
Moses,
Moses. Say more.
when he was shaded when God went by, and then he saw the back of God.
Right, and we looked at that passage last week, where Moses wants to know the essence of God, right? That's the upper kavod, right? The unknowable part. And God says, sorry, no can do, but I'll tell you what, hang out in this rock. The expression, the desired, the protective shade, is from Song of Songs. Katapuach ba'atzei haya'ar kein dodi ben habanim b'tzilo chimarati ve'yashavti ufiryo matok l'chiki. So we have b'tzilo chimarati, like an apple tree among trees of the forest, so is my beloved among the youths. I delight to sit in his shade, and his fruit is sweet to my mouth. So here we have the maiden imagining her beloved like an apple tree, and she likes to sit in his shade. But here, what have we done? My soul desired the protective shade of your hand. So now we've taken this expression from Song of Songs and captured the imagery of Moses up on Mount Sinai with God, being protected by the shade of God's hand as God's glory passes over in front. So kol raz sodecha, right? All the hidden secrets of your mystery, right? That's what he wants to know, but he can't see it because God's hand is shading him from it. Let's look a couple lines down. Well, first we skipped over. Midei dabri bichodecha homer libi el dodecha. When I speak of your glory, my heart yearns after you. Again, your glory, we're talking about the upper glory, right? Because we have this longing of the heart, which can't quite get there. Al kain, therefore, and so, adaber becha nichbadot, v'shimcha achabed b'shirei yedidot. And so, I speak about your glories and glorify your name in love songs. So here we've just made a switch, right? So I can't, like I have this yearning for this upper glory, but what can I do? I can speak about the lower glory. I can speak about the glory of God that's manifest in the world. So we have here from Psalm 87, Nichbadot midaber bach, ir ha'elohim Selah. Glorious things are spoken of you, O city of God, Selah. Of course, the city of God, we're talking about Jerusalem, but the poet has taken that completely out of context. And here it's adaber becha nichbadot. I'll speak of you. Now I am speaking to God, nichbadot, of your glories. And then the second half, Lamanatzeach al shoshanim livnei korach, maskil shir yedidot. So this is just the beginning of the psalm. It's kind of the attribution for the leader on Shoshanim of the Korachites, a maskil, big introduction. What do we have? Shir Yedidot, a love song. All right, and so now, Achabed b'shirei Yedidot. Achabed, I'm going to glorify you with Shimcha Achabed, your name I will glorify with love songs. And notice we have Nichbadot Achabed. So that's the word kavod, glory. So here it's, I'm going to declare your your glories, but we're also referring to the kavod of God, which, if you recall, we talked about last week. It's the smoke from the incense, or it's the clouds coming down on Mount Sinai. It's the part of God that surrounds the essence of God, that hides the essence of God. All right. Wait, let's back up. And we see that again. Asapra chavodcha v'lo iticha. I talk about your glory, though I have not seen you. Adamcha achancha v'lo yidaticha. I describe you, though I have not known you. So again, we have this dilemma. So these are the first 5 lines, and they're in the first person. This is the poet basically setting forth his task. And now we're going to shift gears a little bit. Mediated to your prophets and the circle of those who serve you, you compared yourself to the splendor of your kavod's power. Your greatness and power, they traced to your mighty acts. They imagined you, not as you are in reality. They described you only by your acts. They depicted you in countless visions. Despite all comparisons, you are one. They looked at you as both aged and youthful, with the hair of your head now gray, now black. Okay. So now it's not speaking in the first person. Now we're talking about the way that someone else has related to you. And here it's the prophets, right? So the prophets, that's probably our best material in the Bible for descriptions of God. And so, but what is the poet done is he's noted that the prophets had the exact same problem that we have. All they can do is talk about your kavod, God. They can't talk about you in your essence. Okay, so a lot of allusions here. Some of these will be familiar, but actually all 3 of these lines should be familiar. Gadol Adonai mhulal me'od v'ligdulato ein cheker. Dor ledor yishabach ma'asecha u'gvorotecha yagidu. Hadar kevod hodecha v'divrei niflotecha asicha. What's that from?
Ashrei.
Ashrei, right? So we have the Gimel, Dalet, and Hey lines of Ashrei. And so the poet has picked up on that. So let's start with the third of these 3 lines, the Hey line. Hadar kevod hodecha v'divrei niflotecha asicha. The glorious majesty of your splendor. So he's used that here. Biad neviecha besod avadecha. Literally, by the hand of your prophets, in the secret of your servants, Demita, you compared yourself, Hadar chavod hodecha, to the splendor of your kavod's power. So God, when you revealed yourself to the prophets, you did so through your kavod. The splendor of your kavod. That was the description that you gave to your prophets. It was mediated through this kavod. And next, gedulatcha ugvuratecha. We pick up both of these lines. Greatness and mightiness. Great is the Lord and much acclaimed. His greatness cannot be fathomed. One generation shall laud your works to another and declare your mighty acts. So again, we have manifestations of divine power in the world, which we can encounter. We can relate to those. So that's Gedula and Gevura. Those are both words that are capturing the lower kavod. All right, now how about let's jump to this last line. Vayechezu v'cha zikna uvacharut usa'ar roshcha b'seva v'shacharut. Okay, they looked at you, zaken and bachur, as an old, aged and youthful. Sa'ar roshcha, the head of your hair, the hair on your head. Seva b'shacharut. Seva, they say gray. Seva is like the hoary head, like the white, kind of that fully white hair of old age. And shacharut is like shachar, is black, right? White-headed and black-haired. All right. So what's going on here? We've got the prophets saw God as old and young with gray hair and with black hair.
The interesting, the gray hair comes first.
The gray hair comes first. Yeah, well, we have a little bit of a...
And they had Zaken first also.
Yeah, Zaken Bakur, Seva Shachor. Yeah. All right, now let's go on to the next section, and which keep that in mind, and we'll look at the next section. Zikna biyom din uvacharut biyom krav, ki ish milchamot yadav lo rav. Aged in judgment day, youthful in time of war. So we have the zikna, which we had in the previous one, bacharut. We also had, that's the old age and youth. Ki ish milchamot, literally as a man of war, yadav lo rav. His hands are fight for him. So, Ish Milchama, does that ring a bell? Man of war.
Song of the sea.
Right, so that's an expression that appears in Az Yashir, the Song of the Sea. And this is the line. Adonai Ish Milchama, Adonai Shemo. So this is describing God going to battle against the Egyptians, or maybe even against the sea itself, on behalf of the Israelites. And so the Israelites are describing God as an Ish Milchama, a man of war. All right, so this is a midrash that appears in the Mechilta de Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So the Mechilta is a collection of midrash that's considered to be midrash halacha. So it's midrash on halachic types of issues, although as we'll see here, it's not always halachic in nature. So this begins Davar Acher, which those who study Midrash know Davar Acher introduces a new explanation, and which means that the Midrash has been talking about this verse for a while. Adonai Shmilchama, Adonai Shemo, right? Lord, the warrior, Lord is his name. Lefik shekeshenigla Kadosh Baruch Hu al hayam nira lahem kebachur oseh milchama. Right? When the Holy Blessed One was revealed at the sea, he appeared to them as a bachur, right? That's the word that we've seen in Anim Zemirot, as a young man. Oseh milchama, waging war. Shene'amar, as it says, Adonai ish milchama, right? That's our verse, right? God is a man of war, or the Lord, the warrior. V'nigla alehem b'sinai kezaken atuf. And he was revealed to them at Sinai as a zaken, as an old man, and atuf means wrapped up, like lehitatef batzitzit. So think about an old man kind of wrapped up in his cloak. Ki'inyan shenamar, similarly as it says in the book of Daniel, and this is Daniel's written in Aramaic, so I'll do my best here with the Aramaic. Chazeh chavita ad de kirson ramav atik yomin yativ levushe kateleg chiver usiir reshe kaomer naki yachol shehen. Okay, so here's the verse. As I looked on. So this is Daniel in Babylonia describing this vision that he has. As I looked on, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days. This is an Aramaic expression, Atik Yamin. The Ancient of Days, it's a name for God, took his seat. His garment was like white snow, and the hair of his head was like lamb's wool. All right, so this is our image of God as an old man. And then the Midrash asks, Yakol shehein shtei reshuyot? Is it possible that there are two reshuyot, that there are two authorities? In other words, we've just had a description of God as a young man waging war and then as an old man wrapped up in his garment. Are we describing two different entities? Of course not. Talmud Lomar, Adonai Shemo. No, the Torah says, this is in our verse from Exodus, Adonai Shemo, Yud He Vav He is his name. So however God appears, whether as a warrior or as an old man, God is one. God is Yud He Vav He. So, okay, so but what do we have? We have this rabbinic teaching that God appears in different forms at different times. And in fact, there are other midrashim that express similar types of things. So what does that have to do with our verse here? So that's Anim's Zemirot is describing God with black hair and with gray hair, as an old man and as a young man. So it's picking up exactly on these verses. And I'll point out as well, I don't know if you can see it, it's pretty small. Seir Reshe is the hair on his head. So that's the Aramaic for Seir Roshcha that we saw in the previous verse, the hair on his head. Now here's in Deuteronomy, V'zot liYehuda v'yomar, Shema Adonai kol Yehuda ve'el amot tivienu, Yadav rav lo, ve'ezer mitzarav tihiyah. And this he said of Judah. This is Moses talking about each of the tribes as he's about to die. Hear, O Lord, the voice of Judah, and restore him to his people. Though his own hands strive for him, help him against his foes. So this is Yadav rav lo. Rav means to fight. So Yadav is his hands fight for him. Here, this expression is referring to Judah, the tribe of Judah, which is independent, it's fighting. Nevertheless, it needs divine help. But the poet here has now taken these words and applied it to God through the form of this young strapping warrior. Ki ish milchamot yadav lo rav. All right, and we got some more war imagery in the next verse, in the next line. He donned his helmet of salvation on his head, his holy right arm made him victorious. And then we get this tet line, Talale orot, rosho nimla, kavutzotav, resise laila. As though his head is drenched with dew of light and his locks are filled with drops of the night. So we look at Isaiah, which has ki tal orot talecha. Oh, let your dead revive, let corpses awake and shout for joy, you who dwell in the dust. And here's our line, for your dew is like the dew on fresh growth. You make the land of the shades come to life. All right, so we have kind of a messianic vision. And he picks up that expression, talale orot, dew of light. And then from Song of Songs, I was asleep, but my heart was wakeful. Hark, my beloved knocks. Let me in, my own, my darling, my faultless love. And then we have, for my head is drenched with dew, my locks with the damp of night. Roshi nimlatal kavutzotai resise laila. So here it's in the first person in Song of Songs. In Anim's Zemirot, we've changed it to be in the third person. Now we're describing God as being, with I guess has moisture in God's hair from the dew of the night, so something like that. So extremely anthropomorphic, but we're dealing with the lower kavod in these lines. Yeah. Sherry, did you have a?
Yeah, I was just thinking that it seems like when he's described as a warrior and all these anthropomorphic references, feel, like that's God here. And then I think of God as an old man, as the glorious God. So the kind of wisdom. So action happens, then wisdom takes place, all within God. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, there's a risk though, and maybe we saw this in the previous midrash. If we're going to start to separate God into a young man and an old man, that starts to sound like a certain other religion, right?
Well, yeah. I know, but I was actually just saying as the description is, but it's really more God taking action and then God using his wisdom. It's one God, just at different, in different form.
Right. The image of God as the old man is sometimes used at Mount Sinai.
Right.
Right. So where God is kind of the teacher.
Yeah.
Right. The wise man is the teacher.
Right.
To me, it kind of expresses the complexities of that are almost beyond what we can grasp. Both the young and the old, all in the same. It's just the complexities.
Yeah.
Also, it seems like they're giving a human image to God.
Extremely, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what comes out to me, and why maybe that's because that's the only way we humans can think of God.
Right. Well, I think that's
Having
that's a song that what he's saying directly. This is all we can do.
It's just bring this image in our mind. Yeah, I always wondered about that because I didn't think God really had an image of any kind. I think just, I don't know what I thought. it's what everybody doesn't know for sure, but I find that interesting.
Yeah.
But this is really, I'm glad we're doing this because I never really understood the Anim Zemirot. I love to hear it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, but now it's even more beautiful
Exactly.
our understanding of it.
Okay, so we've been on a section where we were describing God as presented by the prophets in the Bible, who had the same dilemma that the poet had. And now we shift gears. Yitpa'er bi ki chafetz bi v'hu yeli la'ateret tzvi. Right? He beautifies himself through me because he delights in me. My crown of beauty he shall ever be. What does this mean?
Well, God is inside of you.
Does it refer that we're made in the image of God?
Maybe. Yeah, so we've shifted now from the third person back to the first person. So now we have the poet speaking of his own experience. And he might be talking about his own prayers. Right? I've just had all of these prayers, and God is going to become beautiful through me, like through the prayers that I've just done. Right? I've brought delight to God. Right? I've crowned God using my prayers. Right? This word yitpa'er, pe'er here translates he beautifies himself. Pe'er can be like a splendor or beauty, something like that. We're going to see this word again. This is from Isaiah. Bayom hahu yeh Adonai tzvaot la'ateret tzvi v'litzfirat tifara lish'ar amo. In that day, the Lord of hosts shall become a crown of beauty and a diadem of glory for the remnant of his people. So we've picked up La Ateret Tzvi, this expression from Isaiah, as a crown of beauty. We also have Tifara, splendor, which is the same as Yitpaer. Sorry, Tifara here and Yitpaer are also from the same root. You can see the Pei Aleph Resh.
Rabbi, what does it mean by the Lord of hosts? What is
Adonai Tzevaot. So Yud He Vav He is God's personal name, but there's a bigger title, right? So Adonai Tzevaot is the Lord of hosts. So host refers to the heavenly hosts. That's the angelic retinue, right? So the even fuller title is Adonai Tzevaot Yoshev Kruvim. So the Lord of hosts seated upon the Kruvim, the cherubs, these kind of sphinx-like angels, which are kind of drive God's chariot. So that's God's full title.
Wow. Quite a title.
An image.
Quite an image, yeah.
Okay, so we introduced crown a second ago, right? We're having a crown of, so that the prayers of the worshiper are going to are going to become a crown for God. Okay, his head is like pure gold. On the forehead, he engraved his glorious name. For grace and glory, beauty and splendor, his own people has made a crown for him. The locks of his head are those of a youth. His locks are curled and black. May his splendid temple of righteousness be prized by him above his highest joy. May his treasured people be a crown in his hand, a royal diadem of great beauty. Born by him, he uplifted and crowned them. Being precious to him, he honored them. All right, what's the theme here?
Well, since he is so pure and so wonderful, and given us, I guess, the opportunity to treasure him and to recognize what a treasure he is, then we need to uplift him even more by how we honor him.
Right, but I'll point out that he's talking about the Jewish people collectively, right? As a plural, right? So we've shifted from the I, and now we're essentially praying that the prayers of the Jewish people will be accepted by God, right? That God will accept them to become splendid, and then in return will uplift God's people in response.
So we're talking about the lower glory here?
We are, what are we talking? I think we're talking about anytime we're describing I think anytime we're describing God in the third person with these kinds of imagery, I think we're talking about the lower glory.
Okay.
Okay, Rosho Ketem Paz. And this is Ketem Tahor Paz Demut Rosho. His head is fine as gold. His locks are curled and black as a raven, right? We're going to come back to this verse later on.
My dream husband, sorry.
Okay. Sorry. All right, so he's used his head is like pure gold. On the forehead, he engraved his glorious holy name. And the next line, L'chein lechavod tzvi tifara umatu lo itra atara. So for grace and glory, beauty and splendor, his own people has made a crown for him. All right, now we're going to go to Song of Songs. O maidens of Zion, go forth and gaze upon King Solomon. And here's Ba'atara she'itra lo imo. wearing the crown that his mother gave him on his wedding day, on his day of bliss. Okay, so this is the maiden talking to her friends, saying, go look at King Solomon. What is he? He's wearing the crown that his mother gave him on his wedding day, on his day of bliss. So what has the poet done here? Umatu lo itra atara. So atara she'itra lo, that part we've used, and then instead of imo, his mother, we've done umatu, which is his own people. Uma, and Uma is a people. So we've switched out the mother for his people. So now it's his own people has made a crown for him, for God. So instead of King Solomon, it's God as the king, and the Jewish people have made God a crown through their prayers. Right? Very clever. And now the next line, and this is what we just saw. Kfutzotav taltalim shchorot ka'arev. His locks are curled and black as a raven. So here we have machlafot rosho kevimei v'churot. Kfutzotav taltalim shchorot. The locks of his head are those of a youth. His locks are curled and black. We kept out the raven, I guess. Didn't work in the rhyme scheme. But notice every single line here, we're talking about the rosh, the head, right? We saw it last week. We saw that that's a theme that appears many, many times. All right, we got a couple of more. Here's the next line. Neve hatzedek tzvi tifarto ya'alena al rosh simchato. May his splendid temple or abode of righteousness be prized by him above his highest joy. So here we have from Jeremiah, thus said the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, they shall again say in the land of Judah and in its towns, when I restore their fortunes, the Lord bless you, abode of righteousness, O holy mountain. So it's Yivarechecha Adonai Neve Tzedek Har HaKodesh. So this is Neve HaTzedek Tzvi Tifarto. And then Psalm 137, and this psalm might sound familiar. This is a very famous psalm. Tidbak lishoni lechiki im lo ezkareni im lo alet Yerushalayim al rosh simchati. So let my tongue stick to my palate if I cease to think of you, if I do not keep Jerusalem in memory, even at my happiest hour. So that's a'aleh at Yerushalayim, which is literally, I will raise up Jerusalem al rosh simchati, to the head of my joy. All right. So here we have ya'alena al rosh simchato. Right. So may his splendid temple of righteousness be prized by him above his highest joy. All right. The next line, Sugulato tihina viado ateret. Utsnif melucha tzevi tiferet. May his treasured people be a crown in his hand, a royal diadem of great beauty. So now it's the Jewish people themselves are going to become the crown of God. And from Isaiah, v'hayita ateret tiferet biyad Adonai utsnif melucha bechaf Elohayich. You shall be a glorious crown in the hand of the Lord and a royal diadem in the palm of your God. Right. So here, actually, he's kept to the meaning of Isaiah pretty accurate. We have the same subjects and objects as Isaiah does, but we turn the words around to make it rhyme.
Rabbi, I have a
Yes.
question. Can you remind me in these what tzvi in the biblical means? I always thought tzvi was a deer. So
Yes, I think it also
Yes.
means beauty.
Oh,
And in fact, if you hold just a second, I'm going to look that up. One second. Yeah, tzvi means beauty or honor.
Thank you.
Yeah, or it could be a decoration.
That's a popular first name in Hebrew, isn't it?
Tzvi hairs
Tzvi,
usually.
yes, yeah, because it also means like a gazelle,
I'm not sure I'd want to be named after. a
which
gazelle.
may be like if a gazelle is a beautiful animal. I
Yeah.
think they might be related. Okay, so now still in Isaiah, Vishimu, Amusim nisa'am ateret indam me'asher yakru ve'enav kibdam. Right. I said this is difficult Hebrew. This is definitely a tongue twister. Born by him, he uplifted and crowned them. Being precious to him, he honored them. So here we have from Isaiah, listen to me, O house of Jacob, all that are left of the house of Israel, who have been carried, that's ha'amusim, since birth, supported since leaving the womb. Hanisiim minerechem.
Oh, okay.
So he's put them together, amusim and nisiim. So amusim
I
nisa'am.
wonder what, I'm in a class, it'll be over at 4, so I could be there by 10 after. Is that all right? Okay, bye.
Me'asher yakarta ve'enei nichbadeta. So because you are precious to me and honored, and I love you, I give men in exchange for you and peoples in your stead. So I think this is God speaking to Israel. All right, now the next line. Pe'ero alai uf'eri alav v'karov elai b'kor'i elav. So now we've shifted back into the first person. His adornment rests on me and mine on him. He is near to me when I call to him. All right, so notice the word pe'er. So that's the word, here we have adornment, or it could be his splendor. Pe'ero alai, his splendor is upon me. Ufe'eri alav, and my splendor is upon him. Bekarov elai, near to me. Bikori elav. So this is just a very clever verse. We have alai and alav, and elai and elav. So the first one's with an ayin, and the second one is with an aleph. So ayin means upon, al with an ayin is upon, el with an aleph is to. So upon me and upon him, to me, to him. And we have pe'er, and here karov bikori, not exactly the same words, but they're pretty close. And so it's just such a clever verse. And we had that verse earlier. I'm just going to bring it back as well, where the poet threw in a single verse in the first person to kind of express himself rather than to talk about someone else, right? The first section we were talking about the prophets, and then we were talking about the people Israel, and then kind of separating each of them, we have a kind of a personal expression of really hope that the upper kavod, that he can somehow get the attention of the upper kavod through his prayers, right? He beautifies himself through me because he delights in me. My crown of beauty he shall ever be. And then his adornment rests on me and mine on him. He is near to me when I call to him. So we kind of that same sense of longing is still here that we introduced at the beginning, that we're going to end with at the very end. And here it is at different places in the middle. But look what he does here. Now, so this very ingenious construction of this verse, it's also based on biblical passages. So here's Ezekiel. Moan softly, observe no mourning for the dead. And here's our verse. Pe'ercha chavosh alecha. Bind your splendor upon yourself and put your sandals on your feet. Do not cover over your upper lip and do not eat the bread of comforters. So here we have God through the prophet Ezekiel telling Israel, or actually maybe God telling Ezekiel not to go into mourning. Don't go into mourning. So binding something, splendor upon yourself. So whatever that pe'er is, and we're going to figure out what that means in a moment, at least to the rabbis, that's something that a mourner would need to remove for themselves. You would have to, the mourner would take off their splendor. The mourner has to remove their feet. The mourner has to cover their upper lip and eat the bread that is brought to him from those who come to comfort. So what this is saying is don't go into mourning. Ezekiel is prophesying about the exile during the first exile. So don't go into mourning. So bind your splendor upon yourself, and so that's what Anim Zemirot has picked up on, that expression. All right, now this is from the Talmud. Amar Rabbi Abba bar Zavda amar Rav. So Rabbi Abba bar Zavda said in the name of Rav, Avel chayav b'chol mitzvot tamurot b'Torah. So a mourner is obligated in all of the mitzvot that are mentioned in the Torah, chutz min hatfilin, except for tefillin. Sharei ne'emar bahem pe'er, shne'emar be'ercher chavosh alecha. Right. So that it says about them pe'er. So it uses the word, the Bible uses the word pe'er to describe tefillin, as in the expression pe'ercha chavosh alecha. So then they cite this verse from Ezekiel. So what is now this is coming in the middle of a larger argument. We don't need the argument to understand what's going on here. What the Talmud knows is that a mourner does not wear tefillin, right? So, and that's based on the reading from Ezekiel about when he is told, don't go into mourning, put the splendor back on yourself, back on your head, right? So what is the splendor? It's tefillin. So what the rabbis have done is they've identified the term pe'er with the term tefillin. All right. Read it. It's like you have. Sorry, you're on mute.
Okay, so what is it regarding to, we're all now talking about mourning over the dead.
Yeah.
No, are we talking about literally the mourning over the dead? Are we talking about mourning over something that has happened? I mean,
yeah, so I mean, Ezekiel is talking about mourning over the destruction of Jerusalem and the exile of the Jewish people.
So God is saying, don't mourn, just
don't go into mourning, right? And this is part of Ezekiel's message. He says, God did this for a reason, but there will be an end to it. So go make a life for yourself in exile, and eventually you'll come back. Right? That's kind of Ezekiel's message. But Anim Zemirot, though, has taken this expression and nothing here about mourning at all. In fact, this is glorious, right? God's splendor is on me and my splendor is on God. Like what? That's such an intimate image here. And the end of it, Karov Adonai l'chol korav l'chol asher yikra'uhu ve'emet. Is that familiar?
Yeah.
From what?
Ashrei again.
Yeah, again Ashrei, the kuf line of Ashrei, right? So now we've quoted it again. V'karov elai b'kori elav. He is near to me when I call to him. So notice that in Ashrei, it's in the third person. Karov Adonai l'chol korav. God is near to all who call to him. Wow. Here it's me. Karov elai. He's near to me. B'kori elav, when I call to him. Right, so he's made it very, very, very personal. All right, so remember that bit about the tefillin. Here's the next section. Dazzling is he and ruddy, his clothes red, when from treading Edom's winepress he comes. He showed the tefillin not to humble Moses, when Adonai's image was before his eyes. Pleased with his people, he adorns them. Enthroned in praise, he adorns himself. All right. So now we've switched back into the third person. All right, Song of Songs. Dodi tzach ve'adom dagul meravava. My beloved is clear-skinned and ruddy, preeminent among 10,000s. All right. All right. And that's where we have tzach va'adom. We get the first two words of the line, right? Here it's dazzling is he in ruddy, something like that. All right. Now, for the rest of this verse, we go to Isaiah 63, verses 1-3. Who is this coming from Edom in crimsoned garments from Botzra? Who is this majestic in attire, pressing forward in his great might? It is I who contend victoriously, powerful to give triumph. Why is your clothing so red, your garments like his who treads grapes? I trod out a vintage alone. Of the peoples, no man was with me. I trod them down in my anger, trampled them in my rage. Their lifeblood bespattered my garments, and all my clothing was stained. All right, so here we have God appearing in the prophet's vision as as a wine treader, but really a warrior, right? So the wine here is the blood of God's enemies. This is actually a positive message for Israel. This is a message of redemption that Isaiah is giving. But what have we done here is we've kind of removed all of the violence from it, and it just sounds like this. I don't know. I get this just image of virility and fertility, right? Dazzling is he and ruddy, his clothes red, when from treading Edom's winepress he comes.
So it looks like in that statement that it's the wine, not the blood of the people. So
Yeah.
it's definitely, reversed.
Right. So it's so interesting that he took this Song of Songs and this Isaiah passage, right? This beautiful love, erotic passage from Song of Songs and this violent passage from Isaiah and brought them together in this way. Oh, and just tzach ve'adom. So adom is red. Tzach ve'adom, so dazzling is he and ruddy. Lilvusho adom, to his clothing adom, red. Pura v'darcho, went from treading. Bevo'o me Edom. And Edom is like the nation, Edom. All right, now the next line. Kesher tfilin hera le'anav, tmunat Adonai leneged einav. He showed the tefillin knot to humble Moses. Actually, Moses doesn't appear in this. Kesher tfilin hera le'anav. His tefillin knot, the knot of his tefillin, he showed to his humble one. Tmunat Adonai, the Adonai's image, the image of Adonai, leneged einav, was before his eyes. All right, so we've seen this passage. Exodus. Then I will take my hand away, you will see my back, but my face must not be seen. All right, so this is from the Babylonian Talmud. It starts by quoting this passage. Vasirati et kapi, v'ra'iti et achorai, right? I'll take my hand away and you'll see my back. Amar Rav Chana bar Bizna. Chana bar Bizna said, Amar Rabbi Shimon Chasida, in the name of Rabbi Shimon Chasida, Melamed shehar'a hakadosh baruch hu leMoshe kesher shel tefillin. This teaches that the Holy Blessed One showed Moses the knot of the tefillin. All right, so he has quoted the Talmud. Kesher tefillin hera le'anav. This is hera hakadosh baruch hu leMoshe kesher shel tefillin. Reworded the words, but he's taken these words directly from this passage in the Talmud. That because the question is when the Torah says that Moses saw God's backside, what did he see? We don't know what that is. And so the answer is God's tefillin knot. That's what Moses saw. He saw the back of God's tefillin, right? Just as Israel wears tefillin, God wears tefillin as well. Now remember that line, Pe'er, Pe'ero alai u'pe'eri alav. His pe'er is on me and my pe'er is on him, right? So his pe'er, his tefillin is on me. So the passages that appear in the tefillin are passages about God. pe'eri alav. My tefillin is upon him. So the Talmud asks, well, what are the passages that appear in God's tefillin? Right. So that's an interesting question. So, and the answer it gives is there passages about God's mercy for the Jewish people, right? So that line is all about wearing tefillin and just kind of this intimate kind of reciprocity between God and the worshiper. Oh yeah, one more though. Numbers. With him I speak mouth to mouth, plainly and not in riddles, and he beholds the likeness of the Lord. How then did you not shrink from speaking against my servant Moses? So this is after Aaron and Miriam have gossiped about Moses, his wife. So this is, we get Tmunat Adonai, Tmunat Adonai. By the way, that passage is introduced by saying that Moses was the most humble man, Anav, that ever lived. And so here we have Hera Anav. He showed it to his humble one. So here we have the image of God, Leneged Einav. And again, I'm just going to point out the artistry here. Anav is to his humble one. Leneged Einav is before his eyes. And you can see that we just throw a yud in here and the letters are all the same. And now the last verse in this section, Rotzev amo anavim yifa'er, pleased with his people, he adorns them, but really it's anavim, his humble ones. He adorns his humble ones. Enthroned in praise, he adorns himself. Yoshev tehilot bam lehit pa'er. Again, we have that word pa'er. From Psalm, V'ki rotzeh Adonai ba'amo yifa'er anavim bishua. For the Lord delights in his people, he adorns the lowly with victory. Okay. So we see these themes keep repeating themselves. We keep coming back at it, and really that expression we had at the very beginning. I'm going to weave together poetry. Like, I mean, what a great word to use, because this just feels like exactly what he's been doing. He's been weaving all of these words and expressions and passages together to create something new and beautiful. Rosh dvarcha emet korei merosh, dor vador am doreshcha drosh. We pointed this sentence out as this is a second resh line. All the other, when we go through the alphabet, every letter gets its own line. Resh gets 2 lines. Rosh dvarcha emet. Your chief word is truth. Literally, the head of your word is emet. Korei merosh. Caller into existence, merosh, in the beginning, really, but from the rosh also means from the beginning, like Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Hashanah, right? Dor vador, generation and generation, am doreshcha dorosh. Generation and generation, your am is the nation, doreshcha, who seek you, Derosh is seek, right? So lidrosh is to seek something. So this is Am Dereshcha, the people that seek you, Derosh. This is a command form of the word. We're now commanding God to seek the people who seek you, right? And of course, Derosh with Rosh, where we've got a kind of a pun here. Rosh Dvarcha Emet from Psalm 119. This is the longest chapter in the Bible. It's all 22 letters of the alphabet with 8 lines per letter of praise. Rosh Dvarcha Emet u'lalam kol mishpat tzidkecha. Truth is the essence of your word. Or really, Rosh Dvarcha, the head of your word is truth. Something like that. Your just rules are eternal. All right. This is the last section. Can we keep going here? Finish it. All right. Okay. Set my many songs before you. May my piercing cry approach you. May my praise be like a crown for your head. Let my prayer rise like incense before you. Let a poor man's song be precious to you like the song that was sung at the sacrifices. May my blessings rise to the head of the one who sustains, creates and brings forth the just, the mighty. As for my prayer, nod your head in approval and accept it as the choicest incense. May my meditation be sweet to you, for all my being is yearning for you. All right, which glory are we talking about here?
Lower.
I think it's the upper.
Really?
Yeah, I think because now we're back into the first person, and he's
Yeah.
praying that all of my prayers can reach up to your essence. Right?
Well,
I want
guess
it
it
to
depends
pass
where
through the lower and get up to the upper.
Okay, I think about where it's emanating from, whether it's upper or lower.
So here, this is
yeah.
where he's directing, because this is all where, he's talking about my prayers. Where am I sending them?
Okay,
Trying to send them to God's essence.
okay.
Okay, here's the first word. Shit hamon shiraina alecha, verinati tikrav elecha. Again, we have an ayin aleph, little pairing, alecha and elecha, upon you, to you. All right. Haser me'alai hamon shirecha, spare me the sound of your hymns. V'zimrat nevalecha lo eshma, let me not hear the music of your lutes. All right, this is Amos. All right. So what is the author here? He's done the opposite. Shit hamon shiraina alecha. Set my many songs before you, right? So Amos says, I don't want to hear your hymns, right? This is God speaking, right? Israel, I don't want to hear all of your singing, your prayers. I don't want them, right? So now we're reversing it, right? We're using Amos's words, but now he's saying, please God, let my songs go up and appear before you. And then in Psalm 119, the same psalm we just saw a second ago, Tikrav rinati lefanecha, Adonai kidvarcha havineni. May my plea reach you, O Lord, grant me understanding according to your word. So the psalm had Tikrav rinati lefanecha. Here we have rinati tikrav elecha. We switched it around a little bit, probably to make it fit into the poetry. May my piercing cry approach you. Right. Tehilati tihi lerashcha ateret. May my praise be like an ateret for your head, like a crown for your head. Utfilati tikon ketoret. Let my prayer rise like incense. So this is also in the Talmud, Chagiga, and it's describing Ezekiel's vision of the chariot, right? So if you remember that, it's this crazy vision where he sees these angels with all these strange animals and wings and wheels and colors and flashing the light, and nobody knows what it means. But we're going to try and figure out what it means, right? So here we have a little breita, and again, this is appearing within a broader context, but the broader context doesn't matter. What's important here is the description of at least one of the angels in Ezekiel's vision. So we saw in a breita, Sandalphon Shmo, his name is Sandalphon, right? And it's not a sandal phone. Sandalphon. Sandalphon, right? Who is taller than his colleague by a distance of 500 years.
Taller, older maybe?
And he stands behind the chariot, maybe older than his Gavo, but Gavo is high, right? Anyways.
Whatever.
Space-time is a little mixed up here. He stands behind the chariot and weaves crowns for his maker. Kosher ktarim. He ties crowns for his maker. Then we say, Ini, is that so? V'haktiv, doesn't it say, blessed be the Lord's glory from his place. Baruch kavod Adonai mimekomo. Right, so if we're going to bless God's glory from God's place, and only God knows where God's place is, how is it possible that this angel Sandalphon is able to weave these crowns for God's head, right? He shouldn't be able to do that. And so the answer, Miklal dimikamo Leka de Adale de Amar Shem Atga Va'azel Vayate Bereshe. So by inference, no one knows God's place, but by saying a name for the crown, and then it goes and sits on God's head, right? So when Sandalphon says a name, names the crown, it, I guess it causes the crown to go out from wherever God's place is and to sit on God's head. Weird midrash.
Very.
I don't know what it means.
That name is something out of Shakespeare.
Yeah, maybe.
Sandalphon.
Tosfot, commentary, Rashi's grandchildren, the kosher ktarim lekono. So this is on this passage in the Talmud. He ties or weaves crowns for his maker. So here's what Tosfot says. Mitfilatan shel tzadikim hu oseh atarot. From the prayers of the righteous, he makes crowns. All right, that's what Sandalphon is doing. So now we have this idea that when a righteous person prays, it becomes a crown for God. All right. And now, Tehilati tehi l'roshcha ateret. May my praise be for your head a crown. So he knows this teaching, right? So he's kind of responding to this midrash, which is behind this line. And Psalm 114, Tikon tfilatik toret lefanecha mas'et kapai minchat erev. Take my prayer as an offering of incense, my upraised hands as an evening sacrifice. So remember, the incense creates this smoke, this kavod that ascends on high. And so that's what he wants. He wants my prayer to rise like incense before you. But ultimately, when it's rising up, it's eventually going to go from that lower kavod and reach the upper kavod, which is what he's asking for. We'll jump down. I'll point out here a couple of things. Tikar shirat rash be'einecha, kashir yushar al korbanecha. That's a tongue twister. Let a poor man's song be precious to you, like the song that was sung at the sacrifices. So we have another sacrifice reference here. Shirat Rash, the song of the poor person, right? But of course, Shirat Rash sounds like Rosh.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And it's an anagram. Shin, Reish Taf, Reish Shin. And again, Kashir Yushar. Again, we have the Rosh, like the song that was sung al korbanecha, at your sacrifices. And Tikar and korbanecha, I think, are also probably connected, in terms of their sound with repeated letters. Tikar is let it be precious, and korbanecha is your sacrifices. And then
What does Rosh mean again?
Rosh means a poor person.
So Rashi, was he a poor person?
No. Rashi is an acronym for his name, Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yitzchak.
Got it.
Samuel, the son of Yitzchak, Samuel, son of Isaac. All right. Birchati ta'aleh l'rosh mashbir, mecholel u'molid tzaddik kabir. May my blessings rise to the head of the one who sustains, creates, and brings forth the just, the mighty. Right. So the Rosh, that's up above. That's the upper kavod. And so that's what he wants. He wants my prayer to rise up to the Rosh. And what is the Rosh is the creator. That's the transcendent, unknowable God that he's trying to reach.
What does mashbir mean?
Mashbir.
I think it's a store.
Yes, exactly. It's a department store. It's a department store. Yeah, the mashbir. Because why? It's the sustainer. It's where you go to get all your supplies.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the only time I've ever heard. Okay, thank you.
All right. Now, uvavirchati tena'anali rosh ve'otah kachlacha kivsamim rosh. As for my prayer, uvavirchati tena'anali rosh, nod your head in approval. Tana'anali, nod for me, nod your head for me. Ve'ota, and it, kach lecha, take for yourself, kivasamim rosh, like the choicest incense, right? So again, we have another reference to sacrifices that are rising up. What is he talking about here? All right, so let's look. We have another passage from the Talmud. This is a beautiful passage. Tanya, so we have a Braita. Amar Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha. Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Elisha, says, Pam echad nichnasti laktir k'tor lifnei v'lifnim. So one time, I went in to offer incense in the inner of the innermost, right? So he was the high priest. And he's saying, once I went into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur, that's the one time a year that I go into the Holy of Holies. What happened there? V'ra'iti achtriel ya Adonai tzavaot shehu yoshev al kisei ram v'nisa. And I saw Akatriel, Yah, the Lord of hosts. So Akatriel seems to be one of the names of God. So he has this, he goes into the Holy of Holies, he's offering the incense offering, he has a vision of Akatriel, right, of God. This is very similar to Isaiah's vision, where Isaiah also, he goes into the temple, he goes into the Holy of Holies, he's surrounded by the smoke, he sees this image of the angels and the kavod of God. So this is kind of following in that similar kind of story. So what is he doing? He's sitting upon a high and exalted throne. Va'amarli, and he says to me, Yishmael b'ni, Yishmael, my son, baracheni, bless me. Amartila. So I said to him, may it be your will before you, right? So here he's giving a blessing to God. Second prayer, may it be your will before you, that your rachamim, that your mercy should conquer your anger. V'yigolu rachamecha al midotecha. And may your mercy prevail over your other attributes, right? So your vengeful qualities, right? The punishing qualities. V'hitnahegim banecha b'midat harachamim, and act with your children with your midah of rachamim, with your attribute of mercy. V'tikanes lahem lifnim mishurat hadin, and may you enter before them beyond the letter of the law, right? So don't judge them according to the strict letter of the law. Go beyond that and act with mercy, right? This is the blessing that, when given the opportunity, the high priest Yishmael gives to God. How does God respond? V'na'ana barosho. He nodded to me with his head. All right. He agreed. I like that prayer. That's a good one. Right. Now let's look at this. Uvavirchati tena'ana li rosh. And if my blessing, nod for me your head. Right. So he's pulled the language straight out of this story from the Talmud. Right. Right, and accepted as the choicest incense. So just beautiful the way that he has woven together all of these biblical passages, rabbinic stories, and done it with just such beautiful language and puns and
visions.
and then we saw our last line before. Yarav nasichi alecha, may my meditation be sweet to you. Ki nafshi ta'rogi lecha, for all my being is yearning for you. We go back to where we started from, this sense of longing and yearning. Right. And, so Anim Zemirot in most Orthodox synagogues, you'll see it every Shabbat. The Vilna Gaon says it should be actually only done on Yom Tov, on holidays, and there are some traditions that only do it on the high holidays. But it's So I love this prayer even more after
After-
loading it together.
We learned to sing it and do it.
That's
It's a
gonna take
mouthful.
a lot of
It's-
practice.
Right.
You have to be able to sing it fast, say all the words fast. I never been able to. It's a beautiful melody. Are there many melodies to Shir HaMelech?
So it's I know Anim Zemirot v'shirim ero ki elecha nafshi taro.
That's the only one I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's the one I've heard.
Are there other? I've never heard it sung any other way.
מדי דברי בכבודך, הומר ליבי על דתך, הכן אדבר בך נכבדות, בשמך ובשירי ידידות. So that's one. And another one which Anim Zemirot v'shirim ero ki elecha nafshi tarog, nafshi chamna b'tzeyadech. לדעת כל רסדיך, מדי דברי בכבודך, הומר ליבי על דתך, על כן אדבר בך נכבדות, בשמך ובשירי ידידות. It's very similar to the first one.
It sounds exactly the same.
I think it might be a variation of the first one.
Yeah.
Either that or, I just
But
ended
if
up
you,
blending
guess
them
if you-
together.
yeah, I guess if you know it, it doesn't matter because they're so alike, both of them. Yeah. Anyway,
Very
this was
beautiful, yeah.
wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
All right. So next week we're going to look at Adon Olam.
We're doing the same time next week,
Yeah, at
right?
the same time at 3:00. Another oft misunderstood,
Adon Olam.
also beautiful prayer with I think a deep theology, just like Anim Zemirot. And then just in terms of scheduling, I think we're going to need to take a break at that point. I've got some traveling coming up ahead, but Adon Olam will be a good place to break for. So.
Great.
All right. So
Thank you.
again, I apologize
you.
for those who didn't get the message about today's change of time, but thanks for showing up.
Thank
Good
you.
work, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.